You are watching Apostolic Radio Charlotte.
Worshiping with us today. You may be seated. It's a joy to have you all. Church is wonderful because it's one of the few times of the week that we are encouraged to pause from the temporal and to embrace the eternal. This is not a small thing. This is very much a large thing. To think about who you are, how you live, what you choose to do with what God has given you, who you want to be. You see what I'm saying? Amen. This is the function of church in our life. And if we miss it, then there's not going to be many other things in your life to slow your roll and to get you to think about who you want to be. Now, how then should we live, etc., etc. So that's what we're doing here in the house of the Lord. Because we have recently had the holiday of Halloween, I wanted to take a slight different tact on our life class today. And I know that there's a percentage of our church who does not celebrate Halloween at all, and I want you to know that's absolutely fine. If there's one thing we know how to do, it's respect each other's convictions. Can I have an amen? In fact, if you can't respect another person's conviction, then you need to maybe think about, having a better spirit. And so, everybody doesn't have to look like you, act like you, vote like you, listen to music you listen to. This is a good thing. This is what it means for a church to fight for unity. An unhealthy church is always looking for reasons to divide fellowship. That's unhealthy. A healthy church is always looking for things we can have in union and have in commonness and have together in fellowship. Can I have a big amen? Amen. And so, well, let me just say, we have all kinds of people that come to this church. We have, I heard a story about a man who came to the preacher, and he said, "Preacher, would you pray for my hearing? Would you pray for my hearing?" The preacher said, "Sure." So he reached out, laid hands on him, started praying, prayed long, prayed loud. Got done, said, "Now, brother, how's your hearing?" And the guy said, "I don't know, it's on Tuesday." We have all kind of people coming to church, you know what I'm saying? But Halloween, now, I will say this, very few of us, I don't police it, but very few of us let our kids dress up in any way to celebrate an evil spirit or a witch. That's not what we do. We, as a church family, use it as a social occasion. You will meet all your neighbors on Halloween. You will not meet them any other day of the year. So we want to use it for the social, but we don't want to celebrate any of the evil. In fact, for a believer, it's more of a harvest celebration than it is any type of a celebration of an evil spirit. So if you've been dressing your kid up like Dracula, stop it already. It's ridiculous. It's your choice. You're the parent. But you understand what I'm saying? So Halloween is almost universally in the nations where it is celebrated. It is a celebration of masks. People put on masks. And thinking about that, I started being reminded in my spirit how, for some people, it's Halloween all year long. Right. Because they wear a mask all year long. I'm going to read a verse in Luke 16. And, of course, Jesus is clashing here with the Pharisees, which is almost a chapter event in the New Testament. But that's not the point. The point is this. This is 16 and 14. Now, the Pharisees, who were lovers of money, also heard all of these things, and they derided him being Jesus. And Jesus said to them, "You are those who justify yourselves before men," but notice this next phrase, "but God knows your hearts." Lean over to your neighbor, do the finger like this, and say, "God knows your hearts." Which is a real churchified way of saying this. Our masks work very well one with another, yes? Yes. We don't know the heart. But our masks do not help us at all with God. Right. Because God knows the heart. God knows how we're living. God knows how we ought to be living. God knows, most importantly, what we're doing with what we have. I am a firm believer that one of the most forgotten themes of biblical example where people are living their life before God is this theme of the Lord progressively leading you on a faith journey. I think this is in so many churches is minimized in exchange for this sense of one being led by God on a continuing basis. What we exchange for, and not when I say we, I mean humanity, what we exchange for this idea that God is leading us on a regular basis is the comfort of a formula. We substitute for the reality of God leading us, we substitute a formula. The problem with that is some of the pictures that the Lord gave us of the judgment to come. And the Lord gives us a very troubling picture where if you're seeking to serve the Lord with all your heart and you want to get it right, and I think most of us can sincerely say that, if you're doing that, there's this terrifying story in the Word of the Lord. It's one of the most scary stories in all the Word of God, okay? And at least it is to me. And the story is this. There's going to be, at judgment, a type of people who they stand before the Lord, and the Lord says, you were not mine. You were not of my purpose, my spirit, my mission. And their response is, Lord, but you used us. You used us powerfully and authoritatively. You used us. We cast out demons in your name. Watch. Why didn't they say we just healed the sick in your name? Let me remind you that although evil spirits cannot read your mind and see into your heart in the manner of the Lord, evil spirits have much experience with human nature. And they are quite good at figuring out who's real and who's not real. Right. Remember the story in the book of Acts? There's this guy, he's trying to be the next tele-evangelist. And so he's going around and he's casting out demons, and he gets to one particular demon-possessed man, and he tries to cast him out. And what does this demon-possessed man say back to him? He said, now look at here, buddy. Paul we know, and Jesus we know. Who are you? You see, in the spirit world, this is a theological thought for the day. People say it don't be like it be, but it do. In the spirit world, it happens like this. There's going to be people who were so authoritatively used by God that they didn't just fool naive people of a good nature, but without profound formal experience or formal education. And so the Lord sees them as sheep. Good people, but not a lot of understanding. They didn't just fool sheep. They fooled the demons. They had authority, they had power, they had the manifestation of the works, and yet the Lord says to them at judgment, depart from me, I never knew you. Now if you're sincere, that ought to be one of the most scary stories. We're talking about getting scared, it's Halloween, whatever. That's one of the most scariest stories in all the Word of God. To think that you could have been used, to think that you could have been a part of a larger movement, and when you get to judgment, the one to whom you thought you were serving, you have deceived yourself. You weren't serving him. You were serving something else. And the Lord says, depart from me, I never knew you. That is terrifying to me. And the reason why I think it's very important and spiritually healthy for us to adopt the attitude of this, no matter how long I've been serving God, no matter how much I think I know, no matter how high and mighty I perceive myself, I am still a pilgrim. Amen. And the Spirit of the Lord is still leading me. Yeah. Because what we exchange for that humility of being led of God daily is we exchange a formula. And then we say, if I've done the formula, boom, I'm finished. That's self-deception. The Lord's going to judge us by our heart. He's going to look at what you have, what you do, and in a way I cannot understand and you cannot understand, God's going to judge us. When we lose loved ones, we should not live in terrible sense of fear or dread or guilt. You were never capable of judging them, but God can look at what they had and what they knew and who they were, and He can judge them not by our formula, but by their heart. This is important. We must be seekers. We must be pursuers. We must be hungry. The Lord told Abraham to look for a city that didn't exist. It wouldn't exist for 3,000 years or perhaps more, whenever the New Jerusalem. But He said, you need to look for it. He's not tricking him, but there's something that happens in our hearts when we humble ourselves and we say, lead me, Lord, I need more. I haven't arrived. I have not apprehended. I'm not standing. Lord, lead me. I'm open to your Spirit. Guide me by your power. So, the truth is, these Pharisees sought to justify themselves before men. This is a real problem. We can fall into bad habits of serving one another. This is a real problem. We can fall into bad habits of doing something because someone else told us to do it and miss the point of a spiritual relationship. We can fall into the habit of being in church because our daddy is in church. We could be in church because some mentor was in church and miss the profound necessity of a personal relationship with God. Anything you do unto the Lord, you need to make sure you're doing it from your heart. If you're doing it for someone else, you've missed something profound. And you need to go back to an altar. You need to say, Lord, help me restore an altar of relationship with you, to you, in Jesus' name. So we know no matter how we justify ourselves, that's not going to be the standard. No matter how we justify ourselves one to another. You say, I'm in an awesome Bible club. As long as my Bible club think I'm right, then I'm right. Well, that's not how judgment's going to happen. I could say, look, I'm a member of an organization. As long as I'm right by organization standard, then I'm right. No, that's not how it's going to happen. The Lord sees the heart and judges us by that. And so we must fear our ability to deceive ourselves in an effort to deceive others. Because masks are a quite human problem. Let me give you some interesting things about human nature. 2010, researchers at the University of Toronto designed an experiment looking upon the effects of sunglasses on moral behavior. No, I will not soon be teaching against sunglasses, although there's some people who would be tempted. Believe it or not, across large groups of people, sunglasses affects moral decision. And the worst kind, my God, you gotta throw them out. The worst kind are sunglasses where people cannot see your eyes. People will act different in a mirrored sunshade that you cannot see their eyes. You were just trying to be cool. I understand. You succeeded. You are very cool. But they act differently. They recruited volunteers. They had half to wear glasses you could see their eyes and half to wear glasses where you could not see them eyes. And then without telling them, they asked them to donate to, they gave them, they didn't give any of their own money. They just had to donate. They were given $6 to give away to various things they had set up along the way for them to decide to give to. And people, interestingly, people who had on glasses where you could see their eyes, they gave away like a third to a half more than people who you could not see their eyes. In fact, the people who you could not even see their eyes didn't even give away a third of what they had been given to give away. And this goes on even more. In Stanford prison experiment, 1971, a psychology professor recruited young, healthy adult men and assigned half to be prisoners and half to be guards in a simulated jail that he had built in Stanford's psychology building down in the basement. And so they observed this behavior without telling all of the people they were observed. And the behavior of the men who were assigned to be wardens or guards became so cruel and sadistic to those who were assigned to be prisoners, all because of one change that he was testing, and it was this. He gave the guards mirrored sunglasses where you could not see their eyes. In fact, they became so harsh to the prisoners with that small change that after 6 days they had to cancel the experiment. It was getting to a point where people were actively at risk of being abused in some manner. The key to turning ordinary guards into monsters was giving them a mask. Isn't that amazing? If you want to have even a larger effect, instead of just hiding their eyes, let them hide their whole face. In fact, in the 12th century, in the Catholic Church, thank God the Lord brought us out of the mid-ages and the errors and excesses of the Catholic Church, and Catholics are not our enemies by any regard, and even Catholics will admit to the great excesses of that time. And there are many sincere Catholics, so they are not our enemy as seekers and believers. And so they had such a problem. This was again in the 12th century, that Pope Innocent III banned masks as illegal because there was so much immorality among the priests. They would wear a mask and do what their flesh wanted them to do. It goes on and on. There's a ton of experiment on this. 1976, they paid college students to carry an offensive and personally embarrassing sign. I won't read you some of the titles because it's offensive and personally embarrassing. But if a student to carry it, how much would you need to carry the sign around the school where you are a student? If they were not allowed to wear a mask, they required up to $50. Well, now in 1976, the U.S. economy was 1/4 what it is now. The value of the dollar was substantially higher than it is now. I think with inflation, this would be equivalent of like $200, $250, okay? So they had, maybe less, but you get the idea of inflation. And so they required $50, precisely $47.92, average over large numbers, to carry that sign. However, if you would let them wear a mask, they would do it for less than $30. Makes sense. And we in our lives, and we in our journey of being people, we can fall into the habit of wearing masks as a way of protecting ourselves, as a way of hiding from others, as a way of hiding our emotional glimpse, as a way of covering our emotional wounds. Some of it is the result simply of being a well-adjusted adult who has a good sense of boundaries. What I mean by that is it is appropriate many times for us not to let everybody in our lives in on every circumstance, particularly the embarrassing and the negative. And so if you have a strong sense of boundaries and you wear a mask for the express purpose of limiting the people who have to either deal with your problems or be exposed to your issues, I won't say you have a problem. I would say you're probably a healthy, functioning adult. However, if you then try to use that same mask to keep out people who you trust, to keep out people who could help you, and most importantly and damaging, to keep out the presence of the Lord in your life, you have made yourself infinitely poorer by keeping that mask in place. As a preacher, 3 times a week, if not more, I stand and I look at people's faces. I, on a regular basis, see people and I wonder what's going on behind the mask. Occasionally, I will feel what I believe to be a touch of the Spirit in my own heart, and the Lord will give me insight into them. A skeptic could say I cue off of micro-expressions in their body language. That may be true. I'm sure I do that. But sometimes it's more than that. Sometimes I am able, through a nudge of the Spirit, to receive a burden for somebody who seems to be hiding everything ever so well. And I know if you're a spiritual person, the people in your vineyard, if you'll allow me to say it that way, people that you're praying for, people that you're actively seeking to minister to, the Lord will do the very same thing for you. This in the scripture is referred to as a word of knowledge, where we see beyond the mask. And I thank the Lord for that, because there's been times in my life where I've needed spiritual people to see beyond my mask. Is that transparent enough? I've needed that. And sometimes some of you have not known the pain I was in, but because you sent me a card. Or sometimes as simple as you making an effort to say, I want you to know I am behind you. I understand your vision. I feel your heart. I am behind you. You'll never know. I didn't show it to you. I hid behind my mask of being so awesome. I hid behind that mask of everything being great and everything being wonderful. But you, through the blessing of the Lord to me, you were able to give me strength and give me help. I have, I would say, about a dozen of you that just at any number of times ever so often, you'll send me a text, you'll send me an email. And I thank God for every one of you. You are a blessing of God unto me. We cannot let the mask we wear keep away from our heart the people who could bless us, the people who could show the charity of God to us, the people who could embrace us, the people who could encourage us, and most importantly, we cannot use our masks to keep away the presence of the Lord in our heart and in our life. Can I have an amen? Amen. How many of us are going to try to do better on this? To give you some examples of these masks, I pray the Lord helps us to be spiritually sensitive to people as individuals, and spiritually sensitive to people as spiritually sensitive to human nature. Because a lot of the masks that we see with friends, family, co-workers, neighbors are oftentimes, they on their surface will drive you away. But once you see past the surface, spiritually they are like a cry for help. But if we're not spiritual people, committed to charity, committed to the understanding, the Lord chose the characteristics to identify his disciples. And one of them was to love people. Now, if God chose that for you and you're not loving people, you're missing God's marketing plan. That's not my marketing plan. That's God's marketing plan. He wanted us to be known as his disciples, that we have charity, love one for another. So let me ask you, how many of us are committed to God's marketing plan? That's loving people. That's embracing people. The greatest commandment, the theme of the church, love God, love people. This is God's marketing plan. And so when the masks seem to drive people away from us, we have to, Lord, help us to be spiritually mature enough and spiritually sensitive enough to know in many cases it is just a mask. Let me give you a mask that is very, very common. Some people put on a mask of being obnoxious. It's difficult for us Christians to deal with people like this because we are always exhorting one another to be kind, gentle-hearted, forgiving, long-suffering. It's a non-stop kumbaya group hug. You see what I'm saying? That's who we're trying to be. We're trying to be sweet people. Except for 2 or 3 of you, I won't point fingers. We're trying to be sweet people. We're trying to be good people. We're in God's marketing plan, right? Okay, but there are a lot of people who it's almost as though they make an effort to talk first and think later. It's almost as though they want to offend others. They often are the loudest people in the room, and they will intentionally be offensive. Now, with all these masks, it is possible that they are not faking it. That's really who they are. If that's who you are, it's not a mask, right? How am I doing on time? I'm going to skip that story. I'll tell it to you another time. There is a tendency over time for us to become the masks we wear.
That's right.
Okay, so obnoxious people, if they have, to use a biblical image, seared their own conscience somehow trying to hide something, protect something, it's possible it's no longer a mask. But we should not be quick to write people off. We should assume for as long as possible that it is a mask they are wearing to protect something. The truth is, obnoxious people in many cases, not always, we can't speak in huge generalities, but in many cases, obnoxious people are hiding just how lonely, just how defeated, and just how insecure they really feel. And they hide it behind this obnoxious exterior. And many times, it is something that they have learned to do because there was a season in their life they were tragically lonely and tragically defeated, and they developed this mask as a coping mechanism, and now, because you become what you fake, they can't turn it off. God help us to show charity to people, even with a mask on. Other masks that people wear, just to do some fun stuff about human nature. There's so many of these. I could do them and you would laugh on most of them because it's very funny in many cases. But another one I'd like you to think about is a social mask people wear that's more of a fun one. And let's call this one the drama queen or the drama king. It's a mask. Now, how do I say that? Let's define what a drama queen is or a drama king. This is a person who habitually overreacts to things in their life, in their day. They have trouble that comes to them, and let's say it's level number 4 trouble. But what they give you is a level number 14 response. I told you it'd be a fun one, and now I feel impelled in the spirit to say, you know who you are. Not everyone who seems like a drama queen to me or a drama king to me is actually a drama king. People have different experiences of emotions. They have different levels of emotion. And for them, we can't be quick to judge people. We can't be quick to write off people. It might be they're doing their best because of the emotional reality of their, shall I say, hormonal experience. It might be they're doing the best they can, so we can't write them off, but we recognize this very much as a stage of human life and a habit people can get into. We particularly like to make fun of teenage drama queens and drama kings. Why is that? Well, because it was a stage we all lived through. Yes, give me a good nod. We all lived through that stage. I remember when the first girl I really liked would not go out on a date with me. And I went to the prayer room at Bible school, and I cried, and I prayed, and I essentially said, Lord, take me now.
Wow.
I was 19 years old and facing true rejection, not false rejection. And it's a beautiful thing because the Lord knew what I needed more than I knew what I needed. And I still know all of these people. And if the Lord had let us get together, oh, I would be in prison. Just having fun, just having fun. So the drama king and drama queen, your best friend tells you you're not their friend anymore. Kids, it's like 2nd grade, kids go through this phase. You're not my friend anymore. Oh, whatever. See you tomorrow. But when something small happens, there's this huge overreaction. And let me speak to all our young adults and just say this. It is one of the most painful stages of life is when you feel like you'll be single forever, or you feel like that your value is somehow related to your lack of a boyfriend, girlfriend, blah, blah, blah. I will confess to you that it's often better. It's not for everybody, we know that biblically, but it's often better. I would say as a vast general condition, it's much better to have somebody than to not have somebody. But if you fall into the lie of believing that you can never be happy, you can never be fulfilled unless you have somebody, you are being a drama king. You're being a drama queen. You have to believe there's more to life than just what you figure out. You have to believe that God has His hand somehow working in your life. And you have to lean back on that. You have to trust. Because if we can't even do that, why do we call ourselves people of faith? You see what I'm saying? And so The drama queen is a fun one. Here's another one that's fun. The passive aggressive. Now, a passive aggressive person, this is a mask, and I like to explain it like this. A passive aggressive person is a person who really likes to fight. They just don't like to fight face to face. There's some people who like to fight. They just enjoy it. Okay? Some of you are super competitive, and if there's a ball game, you may be the worst person there. Like take my brother Adam, for example. If I'm in a sport, he will say, I could have done the sport every day for 6 years, okay? But he will come and tell me, it just gets his goat. See, right now, he's like, if I had a microphone, brother, I could out-talk you. Right now. And if it wasn't for his sainted wife, who even now is exercising what is known as parental supervision over our dear brother Lord, he would be saying, come on, brother, come on, let's play quarters, let's play quarters. Okay, some people love that tension, that competitive spirit. Just so you know, the Lord would have you know, Brother Adam, 6 years is too much for you, okay? Just so you would know in the spirit. Now, you can beat me in golf, okay? Peace out. The theory here is that some people, however, they actually like to fight. They just don't like to fight face to face. And so they will find 1,000 ways to fight you when you aren't there. Or passive aggressive. Some passive aggressive people, they will leave you a note. They will confront you. It's always a confrontation by note, by text. They're never there. You see what I'm saying? And when you do something wrong, they never tell you, like, okay, that what you just did makes me feel bad. It makes me angry. No, they wait 2 weeks. And then you get a letter of 17 pages and 14 curse words. You see, it's not so much they wake up in the morning and decided that. A lot of times there's some point in their life where the only way, when they tried to do it a certain way, was so painful. And now they develop this mask. I don't want to fight. I don't want to fight. No, you really do. You're dying to. You just don't know how to do it in a confrontation. It's a fun mask that we can wear. It's part of human nature. But God help us to see beyond the mask. You see what I'm saying? God help us to have the spiritual discernment to see beyond and value the person on the other side of the mask. Is that fair? You guys with me? All right, I'm almost done. Let me see if there's a couple more here. A couple more fun ones. The wannabe. This is one of my favorite ones. The wannabe. This is a person who will assume the identity of something they have no chance of ever being. They're a wannabe. Okay? They, for some reason, are covering something within themselves with this mask that they're wearing. I'll give you an example. I'll just pick on myself. Say I showed up and I always had on NFL defensive end jersey numbers, and I walked around and I carried a book on how to make it in the NFL, and I adopt this as an identity. It becomes who I am. Okay. But there's this problem, I actually am under 200 pounds nowadays. Thank you so much. God appreciate those sweet compliments. I'm under 200 pounds nowadays. There is not a defensive tackle or a tight end in the NFL under 200 pounds. Do I have an agreement from the football section over here? You see what I'm saying? I have adopted the identity of something that I'm using to pacify myself. That is impossible for me ever to be. And so we recognize this as human nature. There's also the know-it-all, but enough about my son. 20 years ago, my father said that about his son. This know-it-all is a way where you cover one set of fears. I'll give you a perfect example. So my son, I'm not super organized sports. I wish I was. I truly, I'm not just saying that, I wish I was. If I knew the stats of every football team, I would instantly have something to talk about with 99% of men in America. It just doesn't, so you guys know this. My point is this. So as a result, I'm not out there every day coaching my son, give me 15 more, give me 15 more. Do the chest with your pack. That's just not me. I go outside and I recognize I don't play with them, but we don't do a lot of sports. So I bought a football, I bought a soccer ball. I bought one of these long throwing frisbees, and almost every day him and I are outside practicing kicking the soccer ball, throwing football. It's pitiful. Adam laughs at me publicly, but I'm teasing, he doesn't. It's just your day. But the point is so he starts doing this athletic thing. He goes to school, and he tells his friends, you know, he's second grade, I've started learning soccer. Well, he immediately starts being made fun of. They started learning soccer when they were like 6 months old. They were like kicking it in the crib, you know, they're like soccer experts. So he comes home, I said, how was your day? He said, not too good, Dad. I said, why? He said, well, I told him I was learning soccer, and they all started laughing at me and making fun of me. And I said, well, son, you know, I'm trying to teach him a growth mentality rather than a fixed mentality. I said, well, son, you know, whatever you do is what you get good at. And he says to me, okay. I said, look, if you practice more, you get good at it. If you don't practice more, I said, I'm sure you're good at things that they aren't good at. And my son said this. He said, that's right. He said, I bet you none of them know what a Foodalongosaurus is. I said, what? What was that? A Foodalongo what? He says, Daddy, everybody knows what a Foodalongosaurus is. Except no. Anyway, it's some new dinosaur, whatever. Kids and dinosaurs, shoot me now. That's a know-it-all mask. And all of us, particularly you're like in my household, you can cover up with it. The point of masks is not so we can mock people. The point of masks, or understanding masks, I should say, is not so we can dismiss people. It's not so we can label people. It's so we can understand and love them anyway. That's awesome. So there was a bunch more. The intellectual, the bureaucrat, the politically correct, the corporate people, super successful, the yuppie type, who, you know, they deceive you. You think that they're loaded, but really they owe all the money to the bank. And that's part of, also there's another word for that. I think it's called American. Praise the Lord, somebody. Lord, thank you for your goodness today. Thank you for these wonderful people. We want to have a great day in your presence. Minister to us by your will and your word. In Jesus' name, amen. We'll start a worship service in a few minutes. God bless you.
Thank you for listening to Apostolic Radio Charlotte. Come, worship with us.